My uncle told me Mum wanted him to have the money. He said I was never around anyway, but he didn't know that Mum's best friend used to run a bank, and my mate is training to be a solicitor. They both made one phone call each. What happened next destroyed his entire family. The morning light falls across your kitchen table, catching the rim of a single ceramic mug. There are no other footsteps upstairs. No phone vibrating with a family emergency. No quiet sigh asking where you left a file or what time a doctor needs to be called. Just the steady rhythm of your own breathing and the clear realization that for the first time in decades, your hours belong entirely to you. You finally have the space you spent a lifetime building. Yet somewhere in the background, that familiar cultural hum persists. Friends asking when you will meet someone. Well-meaning articles suggesting your later years require a partner to feel complete. The unspoken implication that solitude means waiting, while partnership means settled. It creates a quiet tension between the peace you have carefully constructed and the lingering question of whether you should simply hand over the keys. Today, we will gently untangle that exact friction. We will explore why stepping away from late-life romance is not resignation, but profound clarity. By the end of this conversation, you will have unshakable validation that protecting your hard-won peace is never a compromise, but a quiet triumph. If nobody has ever told you that your peace is worth protecting, I want to be that voice for you today. Make sure you are subscribed so you never miss a conversation like this one. It is easy to romanticize companionship until you actually step into it. You might agree to meet someone for coffee, expecting a light, pleasant addition to an already full life. But I have spoken with hundreds of women who have felt the same invisible shift, a sudden, almost automatic regression back into the caretaker room. Think of it this way. Imagine spending years quietly renovating a home, clearing out the emotional clutter, placing your favorite chair exactly by the window, learning the precise temperature that brings you calm. Then, within months of a new partnership, you notice someone moving heavy, unlabeled boxes into that very hallway. They do not demand, they do not argue, they just arrive, and suddenly you are carrying the weight for him. You find yourself instinctively tracking his appointments, soothing his unspoken frustrations, quietly rearranging your own week to accommodate his comfort. It happens automatically, as if an old software program auto-boots the moment he appears. Sociological research on the second shift, updated through recent gerontological care studies, confirms this exact pattern. Women in their 60s frequently revert to deeply ingrained caregiving habits the moment a partner enters their orbit. The pull feels familiar because you lived it for years, but familiarity is not freedom. You did not spend decades earning your rest just to quietly hand it back. Recognizing the caretaker reflex before it fully unpacks is how you protect the sanctuary you have already built. Once you spot that reflex, you see something else entirely. How delicate your new rhythm actually is. Your daily autonomy is not a stubborn preference. It is a psychological stabilizer. Picture a finely tuned acoustic instrument. You spent years listening to the harmonics, tightening and loosening the strings until everything resonated correctly. Once that balance is set, a single, heavy touch from outside doesn't just play a wrong note. It throws the entire instrument out of alignment, leaving you to quietly, painstakingly recalibrate it piece by piece. Self-determination theory, widely applied in contemporary geropsychology, consistently identifies personal autonomy as one of the strongest predictors of cognitive vitality and life satisfaction in later adulthood. In practice, it looks like this. You wake when your body chooses. You move through a morning that requires no negotiation, no explaining why you need quiet, no performing to justify your own schedule. Introduce a partner who needs frequent reassurance, spontaneous plans, or steady check-ins, and the compromise seems harmless until you feel the friction. That cumulative weight pulls your nervous system out of its settled groove. Guarding your routine is not rigidity, it is preservation. Before we continue, I want to tell you about something I put together for women exactly like you. It is called Love After 60. In it, I go much deeper into everything we discuss on this channel. How to recognize the men who will drain you, how to protect your peace and your finances, how to date if you choose to without losing yourself, and most importantly, how to build a life in this chapter that feels genuinely full. So many women have told me it changed how they see themselves and their choices entirely. The link to get your copy is in the pinned comment right below this video. Check it out when you're done watching. There is another quiet cost that rarely appears in the flattering early stages, living right in the space between your resources and your energy. We are taught that merging lives is a natural progression, but blending without absolute clarity often creates a steady, invisible asymmetry. Imagine building a sturdy bridge across water. If you are the only one laying bricks, checking the foundations, carrying the mortar, while your partner simply walks across whenever it is convenient, the structure will not collapse all at once. It will fracture under a weight you were never meant to bear. Federal Reserve and Pew Research analyses on late-life financial partnerships highlight this exact vulnerability. Net worth stability frequently shifts when women who have mastered independent budgeting enter loosely defined romantic arrangements. Picture someone who finally secured her pension, downsized to a manageable home, and stopped mental accounting for two. She enters an easy, light relationship, only to slowly realize she is quietly covering dinners, funding trips she never requested, and absorbing a partner's financial stress simply because she has always been so capable. The drain is almost never loud. It is a steady, reliable siphon. Protecting what you secured is not transactional. It is the practical, non-negotiable language of self-respect. But even when your schedules and your finances remain entirely separate, there is still a deeper cultural story we must untangle. And it begins with what we are told our solitude actually means. 3 days after that phone call, I drove to Portishead. Derek lived in a detached 4-bedroom on Knorr Road, backing onto the golf course. The kind of house that says, "I've done well for myself," before you even get through the gate. I parked on the street and sat there for a full minute, breathing. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to look him in the face and give him one chance to do the right thing. Leanne answered the door, Derek's wife. She was wearing a new barber jacket, the waxed kind that costs about 280 pounds. Her hair had fresh highlights. She looked at me, and her face did something complicated. Not guilt exactly. More like she'd been expecting this visit and hoping it wouldn't come. She said, "Callum, come in." No hug, no sorry about your mum, just come in. Derek appeared behind her with a beer in his hand. 1 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. He waved me inside like I was collecting for charity. The living room had a new 65-inch television mounted on the wall. It still had the Samsung sticker on the bezel. There was a brochure for a Canary Islands timeshare sitting on the coffee table, dog-eared at the page showing the premium apartments. I sat down across from him and placed a printed copy of Mum's will on the table between us. I told him the facts. The will names me as sole beneficiary. Executor authority is a fiduciary duty, not ownership. I wanted a full accounting of every pound moved out of Sandra's accounts, every transfer, every withdrawal, every penny. Derek leaned back in his chair and laughed. Actually laughed. A short, hard bark of a laugh, like I'd told a joke he'd heard before. He said Sandra was always dramatic about money, and that verbal agreements between siblings don't need paperwork. I said, "I'm going to ask you this once, Derek. Where is the 118,400 pounds that was in Mum's NatWest account? I told you, she owed me. Years of loans. Years of helping her out when your deadbeat dad left. I kept her afloat. Mum never borrowed money from anyone in her life. She was proud of that. You don't know everything about your mother, son. You were off playing hero in foreign countries while I was here handling things. Show me one piece of paper, one bank transfer, one text message where she acknowledged owing you that money." He stood up. The beer bottle clinked against the edge of the table. I don't owe you an explanation. I was executor. I executed. Now get out of my house before I lose my patience. Leanne hadn't moved from the doorway. She was staring at the floor. She didn't say a single word. I picked up the will, folded it, put it back in my jacket pocket, and walked out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam the door. I got into my car and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from a rage so controlled it frightened me. Because I'd seen the TV, I'd seen the jacket, I'd seen the timeshare brochure, and I knew exactly where my mother's money was going. I drove straight to Clifton, to Rona Gallagher's house. Rona was 64, retired NatWest branch manager, and she had been my mom's best friend for over 30 years. They met at a school fundraiser in 1993 and never went more than a week without talking. When Mum was going through chemo and I was pulling survivors out of rubble in Hatay province, Rona was the one sitting beside her bed, holding her hand, reading to her, making sure the nurses checked her morphine on time. She'd done what I couldn't. I owed her more than I could say. I sat at Rona's kitchen table and told her everything. The empty account, the 18,600-pound balance, Derek's smug face, the verbal debts that never existed. Rona listened without interrupting. When I finished, she went completely still, her teacup halfway to her mouth, her eyes sharp and hard in a way I'd never seen before. Then she set the cup down and said 5 words. I can pull those records. She told me that as a named beneficiary with probate rights, I could formally request full transaction histories from NatWest. She still had contacts at the branch. She knew exactly how transaction forensics worked, what to request, what flags to look for, how to read the routing codes. She said she'd walk me through every single step. It took Rona less than 72 hours to get the full transaction history, and when she laid the printouts across her dining room table and showed me where the money went, I understood why Derek had been so confident I'd never find it. He hadn't sent it to his own account. He'd wired every penny to his wife. Rona laid it all out on her dining room table like a crime scene. 4 wire transfers from Mum's NatWest account to a personal Lloyd's account belonging to Leanne Hargreaves. 4 consecutive days, starting just 48 hours after my mother died. 34,000 pounds, then 31,400 pounds, then 28,000 pounds, then 25,000 pounds. Total, 118,400 pounds. Every transfer authorized using Derek's executor access. No loan agreements attached, no promissory notes, no solicitor documentation, nothing. Just 4 clean wires into his wife's account while my mom's body was barely cold. Rona pointed at the amounts with her pen and said something that made my blood stop. He split them deliberately. 4 transfers, all under 35,000 pounds. He was trying to stay beneath the threshold that triggers enhanced due diligence checks. She looked at me over her reading glasses. This wasn't impulse, Callum. He planned this. I phoned my mate Oshin that night. Oshin Brennan, 28, trainee solicitor at a firm in Temple Quarter. We'd known each other since Ashton Park School. He used to come around ours for dinner 3 nights a week because his own house was chaos. Mum always set a place for him, always made extra. She called him her second son, and he never corrected her. I told him what Rona had found. He went quiet for about 10 seconds. Then he said, "This isn't a family dispute, Cal. This is fraud by abuse of position. This is criminal." He came over to Rona's the next evening after work, still in his suit. He sat at that same dining table and went through every printout line by line. He took photos, made notes, asked Rona questions about routing codes and authorization timestamps that I didn't even understand. By 11 that night, he had a formal complaint drafted for the Avon and Somerset Police Economic Crime Unit, backed by Rona's annotated transaction records. He filed it the next morning before his own caseload started. Then Derek found out I'd been pulling records. He phoned me at 6 in the morning, screaming, called me ungrateful, called me a traitor to the family, said Mum would be ashamed of me for dragging family business to outsiders. I let him talk. I didn't respond. I just let the call record. An hour later, Leanne sent me a WhatsApp message. Long, rambling, full of exclamation marks and crying emojis. She claimed the money was a gift Sandra had made verbally before she died, that I was harassing a grieving family, that she would go to the police herself and report me for harassment. I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Oshin. He replied with 2 words. Perfect. Save. Then Derek started working the phones. He contacted 2 of Mum's old colleagues from St. Mary Redcliffe Primary, trying to get them to confirm Sandra had money troubles and that she relied on him financially. Both refused. One of them, a woman named Pat, who'd worked beside Mum for 15 years, phoned me directly. She said, "Callum, your uncle just rang me asking me to say your mum was broke. Your mum was the most careful woman with money I've ever known. I told him where to go. You should know he's trying to build a story." I thanked her and added her name to the file. Then came the document. Derek produced a handwritten loan agreement dated 4 months before Mum's death. It claimed Sandra had borrowed £14,000 from him, and at the bottom was what appeared to be her signature. He sent a photo of it to me by text, with no message attached, just the image, like a trump card. I forwarded it to Oshin. Oshin told me to stop all communication with Derek and Leanne immediately. Everything from now on went through legal channels only. He connected me with a senior solicitor at his firm who filed an emergency application for a freezing order at Bristol County Court under Part 25 of the Civil Procedure Rules, targeting Leanne's Lloyd's account. The court granted it within 5 days. Every penny in that account was locked. Simultaneously, the police fraud unit opened a formal investigation. I provided samples of Mum's genuine signature from her will, her mortgage documents, and her school employment records. A forensic handwriting analyst was engaged. Oshin worked on my case every night after his regular hours, sometimes until midnight. He told me once, at 2 a.m. over cold coffee in his flat, "Your mum was the kindest woman I ever met. We're getting every penny back." The forensic handwriting report came back on a Tuesday afternoon. I was mid-shift loading a patient into the ambulance outside Southmead Hospital when Oshin rang me. He was trying to sound professional, but I could hear the grin in his voice. "The signature's forged, Cal. It's not even close. The letter formations are wrong, the pen pressure is inconsistent, and whoever wrote it is right-handed. Your mum was left-handed." He paused. "And the police want to talk to your uncle. Not as a witness, as a suspect." They arrested Derek at his home in Portishead on a Wednesday morning, 7:30. 2 officers from the Avon and Somerset Economic Crime Unit. He answered the door in his dressing gown. Charged with fraud by abuse of position under Section 4 of the Fraud Act 2006 and forgery under Section 1 of the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act 1981. Released on conditional bail. No contact with me. Surrender of passport. The man who holidayed in Marbella every summer couldn't leave the country. The case went to Bristol Crown Court 4 months later. I sat in the public gallery with Rona on my left and Oshin on my right. Pat and 2 other colleagues from Mum's school sat in the row behind us. Derek walked in wearing a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit. The shoulders were too wide, the trousers too short. He looked 10 years older than the man who'd laughed at me across his coffee table. He didn't look at me once. His barrister tried. I'll give him that. He argued the transfers were reasonable executor expenses and that Sandra had a complex, informal financial arrangement with her brother. The prosecution dismantled it in under an hour. The prosecutor stood up, straightened her papers, and looked directly at Derek. "Mr. Hargreaves, can you produce a single document, a letter, a text, an email, a voice recording, anything in which Sandra Clark acknowledged owing you any sum of money?" Derek shifted in his seat. "It was between us. Family doesn't write things down." And yet you produced a loan document with her forged signature. You wrote things down when it suited you, didn't you? Derek said nothing. You took 118,400 pounds from your dying sister's account within days of her death. You wired it to your wife's personal account in structured amounts designed to avoid detection. And when challenged by your own nephew, you forged a document to justify it. She paused. Is that the behavior of a loving brother? Silence. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the clerk's pen on paper. Guilty on all counts. 3 years and 2 months. The judge called it a calculated betrayal of familial trust at the most vulnerable moment in a young man's life. Full restitution ordered. The frozen funds in Leanne's account were released back to the estate. Every penny. Leanne filed for divorce within 2 months of the sentencing. She cooperated fully with the restitution order. I never spoke to her again. Derek's daughter Megan, 24, a junior doctor working in Cardiff, cut him off completely. She sent me a handwritten letter. Short. Just one line that mattered. I'm sorry. She deserved so much better. So did you. I kept that letter. Derek's business partner bought him out of the dealership at a steep discount. The Portishead house went on the market to cover legal fees. The 65-inch Samsung and the Canary Islands timeshare brochure. Gone. 6 months after sentencing, a letter arrived from HMP Layhill. 3 pages. Derek's handwriting, small and cramped. He said he was in a bad place financially and panicked. He said he knew sorry wasn't enough. He asked if I might visit. One day. I read it twice, folded it carefully, put it in the drawer next to the last birthday card Mum ever wrote me. I didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I didn't throw it away either. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe it says I'm still my mother's son. I used the recovered funds to pay off the remaining mortgage on the Bedminster house. I kept it. Repainted the kitchen the sage green Mum always talked about but never got round to. I set up a small bursary at her old school, the Sandra Clark Fund. £500 a year for a pupil going into healthcare. Rona helps me manage it. Oisin qualified as a full solicitor 6 months later. I bought him a bottle of Middleton whiskey, the good stuff, and wrote on the card, for the man who made sure Mum's last wishes actually meant something. People ask me if I hate my uncle. I don't. Hate takes energy I'd rather spend elsewhere. But I'll tell you what I do feel. I feel my mum. Everywhere. In the house she kept for me. In the money she saved, pound by pound, over 22 years. In the will she wrote so carefully, because she knew the world isn't always kind. She trusted her brother, and he betrayed her. But she also raised a son who wouldn't let that stand. And I think, wherever she is, that's enough for her. Ida, for sending my own uncle to prison? Maybe to some people, but my mum's savings weren't his to take. Her signature wasn't his to forge, and her memory, damn sure, isn't his to rewrite. I'm not the arsehole. I'm just her son.